Islam Morris here again, class. This is Tuesday, August 21st class, and today we're gonna take a little time to talk about something that came up in a DVD that I saw from a class that some other active Moors in New Jersey Republic are doing. Grand Sheikh Nature and Sheikh Esnika. They're doing a lot of activity. You know, they have the newspaper, you know, always putting out literature, DVDs and stuff like that. So there was this DVD that they did called Psychopathic Constitutional Inferiority. So psychopathic constitutional inferiority. Individuals who show a lifelong and constitutional tendency not to conform to the customs of the group and who habitually misbehave and have no sense of responsibility to their fellow men or to society as a whole. These individuals fail to learn by experience and are inadequate, incompatible, and inefficient. That's the actual definition of psychopathic constitutional inferiority. Right? So our so-called enslavement, right, is mental. Period. Yeah, some people might have got hung on a noose and got their stomach cut open and stuff, but that's not slavery. You know what I mean? And if we keep going in that direction, right? Because there's even Moors that talk about, you know, like the slave trade existed. That's how they talk out of their mouth. Like there was a thing called, there was a thing called slavery, and you know, black people were enslaved by Europeans and stuff like that. They talk like that. No different that, you know, the brother in Pennsylvania or something, right? He's telling me that he went to a temple out there, and the temple was straight church. Like church, but Noble Ali instead. And that's just what it was. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. Because Prophet created that position for people too, who are on that low level and don't want to raise up themselves. Right? Or because of what classes today, the people who are psychopathically, constitutionally inferior, and they refuse to get on the civics bandwagon, right? Because they think that the civics is the white man's stuff. The white man made that up, so why am I going to follow that? Well, follow everything else that the white man made up. You know, all these clothes we're wearing, t-shirts, and this is European. Straight pants, glasses, European stuff, right? In context with, you know, what we're dealing with. It's not really European stuff because we were the first tailors and all that, so, right? But in what we're talking about, you know what I mean? So the black supremacists are psychopathically, constitutionally inferior. Because their position is not to enforce the Constitution, but they want to have the right to bear arms, but they don't want to enforce the Constitution. Like, it doesn't work like that. No matter what you say. Just like with this sister that we're talking online, right? And she's arguing about people come from continents. Like, arguing. Saying that countries are in continents, so people come from continents. Right? That is brainwash. Right? That's not school teaching. Right? Because stupidity and ignorance and illiteracy and all that stuff is a product of education. Like, you get stupid when you go to school.
Yeah, I remember based on what she's saying, I think that's kind of what she was taught in the school system.
No, but you don't need the school system to know that countries are where people come from. You just look it up in a dictionary, right? Or common sense, right? But what is it that we say? That if 1 and 1 equals 2, right? And we can't convince somebody that that's the truth because they think 1 and 1 equals 3. Like, we don't need to talk to that people. There's no need to talk to them. There's no need to engage them. Right. But that's why Noble Drew Ali said that when he came in 1913, he came for the children and the unborn. And he didn't talk about adults. And then the books that he gave to the adults were called whatever for children. But, you know, we're arrogant because we have big bodies, right? We're adult, but our mentality is minority, which is why we're in the situation that we're in. It's not like they have to try anymore. You know what I mean? What they wanted to do is in motion, right? And Noble Drew Ali came, and when he came, his position, right, was to resurrect the Moors from their grave of ignorance. But nobody took him serious, right? Which is why when before Noble Drew Ali died, right, and died under circumstances involving Moors, not involving Europeans, he made 2 proclamations to the Moors in 1929, because he knew at that time that, you know, it was already done for him, right? So he had to speed up the process of what he was doing and implement certain things in order to keep in line with the law that was going to be fading out because the de facto was taken over. And the de facto was only taken over because he realized that everybody is psychopathically constitutionally inferior, and they're not gonna stand up for their rights when it really comes down to let's stand up for our rights. They just want a poppy show. They just want to go to court with fezzes out and flags, you know what I mean? But nobody wants to go up in front of the judge though and talk. But everybody wants to go to court. Yeah, to support and go, right? And most of the time, when you end up in front of them, they're constitutionally psychopathically inferior because they're corporate, no problem at all, right? They're corporate. So their psychopathic, constitutionally inferiority complex is active also. They're not supporting the Constitution. Which is what has to be supported in order for you to say that you want to exercise anything. So Prophet knew that the end was coming.
So we have to speed up and leave something in place.
Right.
So that whoever take over can follow.
Right. You know? So this is one of the readings, right? And it's called A Warning from the Prophet to be read in every meeting. So in the Moorish Science Temple of America, right, there's a Friday Holy Day meeting, and then there's a Sunday school, right? That's mandatory. And then all the other days of the week is supposed to be filled up with stuff with regard to the nation, right? Between all the different departments. So at all these meetings, when we convene, we're supposed to read these. So we can be clear in our mind that Noble Drew Ali knew that there was a sellout. Noble Drew Ali knew that people tried to kill him. Noble Drew Ali knew that it was people that was inside his own movement, not the congressmen and people who he was engaging with out there for the Moors, but the people who were inside with fezzes on and turbans on, saying Moorish American prayer and 500 left, 2 on the right and all that, right? And straight lied to the people, like lied to everybody. You know, they're first. They're the first sellouts. You know, the Elijah Muhammad's and all these people after, they're way later. Because to do what they did, they had to infiltrate even before when the FBI papers say that they infiltrated. They had to infiltrate from like the beginning. That's the only way they could get that deep. You know, but then again, right? Allah guides the destiny of the Moorish movement. So it's not like it's something that happened that we should look on negatively. Yeah, because Noble Drew Ali said again that it's for the children and the unborn generations, which are us. So he didn't do what he did for those sellouts back then. He did it for the ones who were coming. And his and the colonizer, inquisitionist, usurpers counteraction to him making the statement that it's for the unborn generations and the children, their counteraction to that is how they have our children now thinking they're adults and doing adult things when they're children, right? Because it's mental. When they plan for 50 years ahead. That's what Noble Drew Ali was doing when he said for future generations. You know, and future generations, not just 1 or 2 coming up, future generations. That's why he kept all of his information like super simple. So no matter what generation, you're going to be able to like gravitate to this. Because your involvement, the involvement of infiltrators and people who sold out Noble Drew Ali is because the people didn't have faith in what he brought, because they just weren't there. They weren't there. So it wasn't for them. It was for us who are here now. And then now that we're here now, we can look at the full landscape and we can see, okay, well, that guy over there, That guy over there said that he's a reincarnated prophet, and there's a bunch of people that follow him. Okay, well, you know, I put this on Facebook today. How are you going to say that you're reincarnated, right, when the word is really incarnate? There's no such word as reincarnate. Just like there's no such word as represent. You could only present. And I was trying to explain that that's why Moors don't hire lawyers. Because if you hire a lawyer, the lawyer is going to represent you, which is fraud. Because there's no such thing as being represented. Either you're going to present yourself or you're not. And Nobuju Ali drew the line in the sand so you know exactly what's going on. He didn't hide anything from anybody. There was no adept chamber, in the sense how people look at it like adept chamber. Like there's these group of people that are, you know, they're the higher ups of the temple, right, that are in control of everything. No, like everybody's grand sheik and grand governor and grand whatever they are, because that's your position and that's your title when you come in, because you're supposed to be a teacher for the unborn generations. You're not supposed to be like, it's like people say, yeah, we're going to do a lecture. Let's do a lecture, right? So do a lecture, get everything set up, bam, bam, you know what I mean? Chair set up, bam, place is packed, right? Man does the lecture, like everybody claps at the end and everything, like, yo, amazing lecture. Lecture of the ages. We have it on DVD, we have it on audio, you could download it, whatever. But there's no children there? Only adults? Who already know what this guy's talking about? Like, they already know what he's talking about. So what are they doing there? Now, there are some adults who have to be there to get, you know what I mean? Right? But a good percentage, they don't need to be there. They should be doing their own lectures.
Same age,
Exactly. Right? Everybody wants to get props. That's why this guy's going to say he's reincarnated prophet instead of calling himself by his name. Why you have to be the reincarnated prophet unless you're trying to beg some props that we're going to talk about when we get into this, right? Like, I'm talking so long to lead up to this letter. So everything that he says in the letter is relative to what I said before I read the letter. So you can know that it's not like, there's no vague area, right? There's not supposed to be any confusion with regard to this. And if there is confusion with regard to this, then it's somebody who has a fez or a turban and says Nobuju Ali and Islam that is causing the confusion. It's not some outside European Islam fan, right? So a warning from the Prophet to be read in every meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must put an end to all radical and agitating speeches while on their jobs, home, or on the public streets, right? So, like, you know how we talk, right? Now, religious Moors who are on the no civics, right, don't understand that the presentation of this has to be agitated, right? Because the brainwash that you're under, I'm not just going to tell you one time you're not Negro, black, color, and like, yeah, I'm brown. Like, okay, let's go to the temple. Yeah. Right?
The state that you're in, it's going to agitate.
It's going to agitate you, right? At the same time, that's also why he said put an end to it, right? Because we are supposed to be getting to that level. But we would be able to do this if everybody was down with the Prophet. But everybody wasn't. Everybody was agents and sellouts. So when he said new Moors are going to come with their eyes wide open, right? He was talking about today. And as far as we're concerned, like, we're the newest of the new Moors, because the only reference of Noble Drew Ali in Canada is 1920 something, when he came and met with Oscar Booton and Madame Booton, who were members of the Order of the Elks, and they were going to bring Noble Drew Ali here to do lectures in the 1920s, right? So that was the last time that his name was mentioned out here, right? So like, we qualify as new Moors, whether we know about Noble Drew Ali, whether we don't, whatever, right? That concept is new up here, right? That's why there's only 5 people in class, right? We might have 50 people online, but majority of those people they're across the border, so-called border. There are people like, what I mean? There's a handful that's around here, just because they couldn't make the travel. They would rather make the travel, but if you can watch from home, cool. That's a bonus. You know what I mean? Right? We advocate peace and not destruction. Stop trying out your cards with the Europeans, for it causes confusion. There has been much confusion caused by members trying out their cards. The cards are for your salvation. Failure of obeying my orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members that seek to hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet, or to violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors must obey the laws laid down to them by their prophet, and if they lose confidence in their prophet, give up your card and button, cease wearing your turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. For this is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Noble Drew Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet is sending out a divine plea to all true Moorish Americans that they may do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Right, so this is 1929. Right? So if his closing lines were, do your part in protecting their prophet and the temple, then he's saying that he's in adversity. That's why he said, don't violate the divine covenant. Because the divine covenant says, if your brother's in adversity, assist him. And yeah, he was the prophet, but yeah, he was also our brother. But, he wasn't to the sellouts. That's why they didn't assist him. That's why he wrote the letters. Well, not the letters, this letter. Right? So, this was, like you can say, the first warning that he gave to all true Moorish Americans. So if he's saying that there's true ones, then there's false ones. Now, he doesn't have to say that they're false ones, because if you study, you know that, we deal with hermetic principles, law of balance, polarity, and all that. So if he says true, then there has to be a counter to that, even though it's not mentioned. Right? So now the second letter to be proclaimed every meeting. Islam. I'm glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There is a host of jealousy about me and the movement by now, by the same people of our side of the nation that claim it was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, right? All Asiatics, right? And this is 1929, all Asiatics. So Nation of Islam is not even founded yet, right? But then Prophet gets assassinated, 1930 comes, and NOI pops out of nowhere, and they're talking about Asiatic black man. The Noble Drew Ali said right here, all Asiatics. So Asiatic is already the black man. So you don't need to attach black man to it, just say Asiatics. But if you just said Asiatics, there's a paper trail that leads back to Noble Drew Ali, because Noble Drew Ali said the term Asiatics. And remember, when we say psychopathic constitutional inferiority, we're not talking about the United States of America Republic Constitution only. We're also talking about the Constitution for the Moorish Science Temple of America. Act 6, that you're not Negro, black, colored. That these guys are violated, trying to attach black man to Asiatic. They're psychopathic, constitutionally inferior. That's their position. And just like Noble Drew Ali said, we desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. So the truth has two tiers. Like the truth, but not just the truth, but then the divine truth. On top of the truth, there's another truth called divine truth that he also wanted us to know. Not just the truth only. Right? And these are the upper levels of moral science that they say is the adept chamber, that the people aren't supposed to know. They're just supposed to know, constitutional bylaws, 101 questionnaire, Holy Quran, Noble Drew Ali, have a picture on you, make sure you have a constitution on you, walk around with it, show people, yeah, I'm Moorish American, you're not Negro, and that's what it is, and that's that. Right? But they're not enforcing it. They're not really enforcing it. They have it. Right? It's no different than, Catholic Christians, and they have the Bible, but they don't really know it. You have it, you got it on you. It's everywhere. You might pull it out on the bus, read it, whatever. Go to church and all that stuff, go to the mosque, go to the synagogue or whatever, but you don't really read that. That's how you're supposed to read it in order to get what you're supposed to get out of it. It's just something that you have because you're part of this thing that you think is an organization or a club or something, right? They are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so they themselves may take charge of the situation. This is the prophet talking. They're working every scheme that they can. Like every scheme. Every scheme. Not some schemes or, like he was specific in what he was talking about. Right? Every scheme, like schemes are going on even after he passed, they're still trying to run schemes on the prophet. And he's not even here to defend himself. And they're still scheming. This is why he's putting out the letter. Because he's a prophet, that means he's a warlock, he's a seer, he's a witch doctor, he can predict the future and all that. So he already knew what was coming down. And nobody else knew. That's why he could do what he did. Right? And then that's why we honor him and respect him and exercise what he said to do. Because what else? We did everything else and that never worked. We're still here. Still calling ourselves Negro Black Color 2012. So obviously, everything that we did after the prophet had no effect whatsoever on our liberation. We just, the hamster just, right? But that's psychopathic constitutional inferiority, right? Individuals who show a lifelong and constitutional tendency not to conform to the customs of the group. So the custom of the group, as far as the Moorish Americans constitution, is you're not Negro, black, colored. Okay, so if you're not gonna go with that, then your psychopathic constitutional inferiority is your blinders. Because you can't even see what's obvious. And if you can't see what It's right in front of your face. You're a blind man. Right? Individuals who show a lifelong and constitutional tendency not to conform to the customs of the group, and who habitually misbehave and have no sense of responsibility to their fellow men or to society as a whole. These individuals fail to learn by experience and are inadequate, incompatible, and inefficient. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through faithful Moors. So if you say faithful Moors, then there's obviously unfaithful Moors somewhere. You know, but why big them up? You just big up the faithful Moors. You don't need to talk about the people who aren't doing anything. Right? Faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I'm calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works, which I have performed in the last few years. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement, right? He didn't say the Moorish movement, the movement. So he's generalizing and talking about everybody. Whoever says some type of claim that they're a movement for people. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement. Let's go to the movements. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement. The Black Muslims, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Congress of Racial Equality, Youth Movement, Group on Advanced Leadership, Freedom Now Party, United Black Nationalists of America, the New Pan-African Movement, the National Urban League, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Committee on Racial and Religious Progress. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. So what's he saying? That they recognize him. Well, why do they recognize him? Because, not just because he's the prophet, Noble Drew Ali, right? But because he is the grand sovereign of the Moorish nation. Like, he is the fifth and last prince.
So they recognize that he is the
rightful heir to the North Gate. He's the heir. And the world recognized him. And they didn't give him any type of authority. He exercised. And they just gave everything up to him. That's why we talk about people going to, the prophet is whatever because he has the Sultan, pale Arab in the Circle 7, in the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple. Right? Okay, but I haven't seen the Sultan come and say, take my picture off your book. That's the Sultan. Because people recognize that that's the Sultan, the pale Arabs who are ruling Saudi Arabia right now that put us in slavery. Alright, cool. So you recognize that they have some authority then. If they put you in slavery. They obviously have authority if they put you in slavery. So they recognize him, right?
They don't recognize the one who's trying
But they're not going to recognize the one who's paving the way for them, right? And he's telling the people about their customs, right? He's telling people about not habitually misbehaving. He's telling people to take responsibility, to love their fellow man and society as a whole. He's telling us to be adequate, compatible, and efficient. So that not even if they're going against the constitutions of the United States of America Republic or the Moorish Science Temple of America, not only when they go against that are they constitutionally inferior, but also when they go against the prophet, they're constitutionally inferior. Anybody who talks against the prophet is constitutionally inferior. And against not only in negative, but just talk in the sense of, forget him. I'm going to follow Elijah Muhammad. I don't care. Or I'm going to follow Haile Selassie. I'm going to follow Marcus Garvey. When all of them recognize the prophet, of course they're not going to come out of their mouth and admit that they recognize the prophet. Because that means it all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility.
It's like there's a mental block that doesn't allow it to go through.
It's jealousy because of his fame and nobility. Right? Don't want to let the prophet get his dues. Don't want to get their own dues. Want to siphon off his dues. Right? Don't want to get a grant and give it to the community. Want to get a grant and pay themselves to do the job that the grant money is supposed to go to the community. So what are you paying yourself for?
You're helping the community, you shouldn't take pay.
Yeah, like you didn't take pay to write the grant. That's a job. There's people who grant writers that's their job. That's what they do. Pay them money. Like, I know those people. You pay them and they write a grant for you. Okay, so you write a grant by yourself and get the money and pay yourself when it's not really supposed to work like that, right? Jealous of his fame and nobility. So Noble Drew Ali gave everything to the Moors. Everything that he did was for the Moors. There's nothing that Noble Drew Ali did that was for himself. Nothing. He did no activity for himself only. Everything he did was so that the Moors could have something when he gets taken out the picture. That's why he just put it all out there like that. Right? That's why the Moors that brought us in, they ran us through the attic chamber. Like, went through the attic chamber on a weekend. Just because you have to catch a bus. But we're not letting you Moors come from Canaanland, where it doesn't have anything about the prophet, to somewhere where it has almost everything about the prophet, and not take anything back there. Right? That was 2007. And there's stuff today I haven't looked at yet still. Because of where this went coming in. Like, there's junk drives with files and files and files that I haven't looked at yet. Right? That's how much they dumped everything on us. Right? Because they didn't want us to be constitutionally inferior. They didn't want us not to know. They didn't want us to pretend like, we have all this information and nobody else has it. So, we're gonna come out here and be the reincarnated prophets and keep pointing to the fact that, yeah, the prophet was here in Canada, so we're here now as the new prophets to help you or whatever. Right? Our job was to come up here and let people know about the prophet, about the Moorish movement. Right? People gravitated to it, some people gravitated to it and jumped off it. Right? And the people who gravitated to it and jumped off it because they realized that we don't play no responsibility. We don't play slacker nigger. We don't play just come to class and that's it. And after class, you're going to the bar and slapping girls' asses and going to the strip club and stuff. Like, we don't do those ones. Like, it's not nothing personal. They themselves felt that, they can't push against the force that is dealing with this, with that foolishness. So they exited themselves. It's nothing personal. They're just not ready. Just like the religious morals. They're just not ready for the civic level. So, do your thing. But don't try to condemn me for being active in civics when you're a religious moral. You don't even know the meaning of civics. Right? Nobody's going to say, proclaim your nationality. And then people are going to say that, yeah, this is a religious movement. When nationality is civics. Right? Oh, and I love my new word. Right? People are asinine. Right? I learned that word the other day from the German lady that I bumped into. Right? At this community barbecue. Telling me about what's black people. What do you mean they call themselves black people? I don't understand. I don't get it. The German lady.
She understands.
You need to go on the microphone and go tell these people around here.
Wow.
Right? German lady.
Wow.
Right? So you mean they willingly just called themselves that?
She actually said that?
Yeah. Willingly. That's why she said it's asinine. Because she's like, they're willingly call themselves black people. Right? Because she was making reference like, what do you mean black people? Like dark-skinned people? Like Saint Maurice? That's what she said. Because Saint Maurice, the saint in Germany, the Moor of Germany, was dark-skinned. And they call him a Moor, they don't call him black man. It's only when he comes over here that he turns into a black man. The black man of Germany. That was a saint. Right? Like when people go and they do the, we're going to go take a trip to Africa. Right? And we're going to go see that the black man created civilization. It's fraud. The word black is a modern term. When you go in some ancient time, those people weren't called black people. But there was no word called black back then. There was no language called English back then. Or French or Latin or whatever. Right? So this article right here I found dealing with nationality and how serious people who have nationality, how serious they take having it and don't want to lose it, and how serious people who for some reason don't have a nationality want to take away other people's so they can take advantage of it. And that's what the game is. Either you have a nationality and you're protected, or you don't have a nationality and you become a slave. Right? Sudanese asylum seekers in Israel are being issued with documents changing their nationality, allowing them to be removed from the country or imprisoned. They have recently been issued with documents labeling them as South Sudanese, despite holding passports showing they were born in areas that remain in Sudan. 4 migrants from the Republic of Sudan have already been flown from Israel to South Sudan, an entirely different country that was formed last year. However, The South Sudanese authorities refused to accept them at the border and they were taken back to Tel Aviv. Non-governmental organizations estimate that at least 100 more Sudanese asylum seekers in Israel may have been issued with the wrong nationality in the past 3 months, and fear there may be more attempts to remove them. South Sudan came into existence only July 2011, after a 21-year civil war. Intense hostilities remain between the newly formed country and the Republic, with conflicts regularly breaking out on the border. Israel is unable to deport people to Sudan as it has no repatriation agreement with Khartoum, but a recent deportation order allows it to deport migrants to the country's newest neighbor, South Sudan. Now, NGOs based in Israel report that people from Nuba Mountains region of Sudan are being issued with temporary visas stating they are South Sudanese by Israeli Ministry of the Interior, making them eligible for removal from the country. South Sudanese asylum seekers have been asked to leave Israel voluntarily, but those who do not face imprisonment. Thomas Abdullah Tutu, 32, who lives in Arad in the south of Israel, is one such case. He is from the Nuba Mountains in Sudan and arrived in Israel in 2007. Mr. Tutu recently had his documentation recalled and was issued with a temporary visa for Israel that gave his nationality as South Sudanese. Now he fears he will lose his job as a hotel steward and could be imprisoned and flown to South Sudan. The prospect of moving to Sudan, which even more succession was in conflict with Sudan, is worrying for migrants. It is a bad situation in South Sudan, Mr. Tutu told the Bureau of Investigative Journalism in a phone call. There is nothing there and no one has family, houses, or money. They are afraid to go and confused, he said. If I go there, I am sure something bad will happen to me. The African Refugee Development Center, an NGO based in Tel Aviv, which works with African migrants, has seen around 70 people with passports and birth certificates suggesting they are Sudanese, who have been given South Sudanese documents. It is estimated the number of those affected may be twice that. The UN Refugee Agency and other Israeli NGOs, the Hotline for Migrant Workers and Students for Refugees, also reported witnessing Sudanese migrants being issued with South Sudanese documentation and being imprisoned or coerced into leaving Israel. Paul Herson, a spokesman for the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, explained how the confusion arose. He said the vast majority of people arrived in Israel before South Sudan existed. We've been working very closely with South Sudan to identify who is South Sudanese. He added that it is the South Sudanese government's responsibility to issue passports and travel documentation. They're not talking about issuing licenses and stuff like that. The UNHCR has voiced concerns over Israelis' immigration policy. The return taking place from Israel to South Sudan does not meet UNHCR standards outlined in the formulated UNHCR guidelines for voluntary return. Several NGOs report that children have been imprisoned in unsuitable conditions. People are given insufficient time to make preparations, and some are imprisoned despite having signed up to voluntary departure. African migrants are an issue of concern for the Israeli government. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there are approximately 60,000 to 65,000 illegal immigrants in the country. However, 2/3 of those come from Eritrea, Somalia, and Sudan, countries which Israel cannot repatriate citizens to due to their collective protection status. Confusion over nationalities has occurred before. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz, Haaretz, reported how The government used a loophole to deport people from Eritrea to Ethiopia based on an Eritrean law granting citizenship to anyone whose mother or father was an Ethiopian citizen. The rule change allowed Israeli government to deport Eritreans to Ethiopia, claiming they could obtain citizenship there. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs categorically rejects the notion it is using vagueness around nationalities to allow for the removal of some Sudanese to South Sudan. Right? So it's getting, this is like what Grand Sheet Nature was talking about at the New Jersey lecture with Todd, right? That proclaiming their nationality isn't just they'll do it anymore. Like they are clamping down on nationality as being the identity of people, right? Like they're clamping down on that. It's like again, this whole thing, this social media thing, right, lets you engage people who, because of their ignorance, schooling, and certain stuff, right, because they're so far out there, that it makes you have to digest that. Damn, like they're really out there. They're supposed to be on this side. We got fezzes on. Like how are they battling me when they have fez on?
So you can't just, you're saying, proclaim your nationality and not really be able to support what it is that you're saying you are.
Because proclaiming their nationality sounds good. You know, you do it, yeah, Kujrat well, Islam. But do you know it? Are you exercising as that?
When you say have the community, you gotta be working in the community,
right? Well, I mean, not working, but who you working for?
Not work,
or like being right. But again, doing that is good, right? It's just like when our people say unity, right? We're gonna have a unity barbecue because there's too much violence. And everybody comes together, 500, 600 people, everybody comes together, talk, chill, whatever, meet, greet each other, hi, how you doing, hand some stuff out, talk about, as the community, oh yeah, we're gonna have to do a moment of silence, for all the people that were killed by gun violence and silence, right? And
when it's all done, they all go home. Stop each other on the back. Here's your props, right?
Good job, Cujo. Thanks, man. Thanks. Right.
It has to be consistent.
Yeah, but it's only, this is why Noble Jawali's making the call out to certain people who have been maybe ridiculed or whatever, and they just decide, you know what, I'm just taking it back. I'm not gonna go do it anymore. Right? Like there's like I don't know. All I know is that their information, like certain people should be putting information out as far as Moors are concerned, right? That have put information out before. And then all of a sudden, these people aren't putting information out anymore. Right? This is because they got to that place where it's like, I'm a Moor for me now. I'm not a Moor for all these people out here. Because all these people out here, I can't even deal with these people. And 98% of them are ones with turbans and fezzes on that I'm trying to deal with. Right? But it comes back to the concept. Who's the nation? Moors with turbans and fezzes? No. The nation is the people who don't know about this. That's why we don't get, pressure when people come at us that have turbans and fezzes on I want to see our seals, and we want to see your charter, prove you guys are real Moors, and you're a real temple, right? As soon as they come with that, bam, find some youths, do a quick class, and release Val, that madness that he's trying to come with, because I ain't even hearing you. You can say whatever you want. Like, you're not, I only say something because I know that there's somebody that's going to be listening that's going to pick up something, and they'll, whatever happens, but I guaranteed somebody's going to pick up something, right? That's why we're adamant about the debate that, do it, because information is going to get out. They don't care about this guy. They're on that side. They're on the side of not faithful Moors. They're on the side of, jealous of my fame and nobility. They're on the side of, I'm the new prophet. When they don't even know that Prophet Noble Jew Ali is a corporate name. Just like Moorish Science Temple of America. His name wasn't Prophet Noble Jew Ali. That was the corporate name, so he can use out here. His name was Sheikh Sharif Abdul Ali. That was his name. That was his free national name. And people say, how you know that's the free national name? Well, because it was in the other chamber that the sellout tried to hide. So luckily, there were some Moors that knew the truth. Right? And it's Moors that we hold dear, that are telling us where they're getting the information that they're putting out that's not available right now. And people are going to look at it like, oh, well, he's just making that up. When like a Moor who was maybe like one generation away from the Prophet, right? That their dad or their somebody was like with the Prophet, that they got some information on the backside. And nobody knew that they had anything, you know what I mean? Nobody knew that they had these stacks and stacks and piles of information about really what's going on with the Moorish movement and what Noble Jew Ali brought and what he set up and all that, And many, because there were, if Noble Jew Ali's temple alone had like 25,000 members or something, like that was his temple only, right? And then there were 25 temples and then 15 branch temples, right? There was a good hundreds of thousands of people in this movement of the time of Noble Jew Ali. And all those people are paying dues. Religiously. Not missing dues. Right? It would seem that, things are on the progression. Okay, but in the reading that he said read every meeting, he's telling me, well, he needs finance badly. Like, how does he need finance badly if there's 25,000 members that are paying dues religiously? And he needs finance badly?
So what happened to the dues?
What happened to the dues? We already know what happened to the dues. If you go, right? If you go, right, the same brother, right, on Facebook, right, issue that we have with him right now is that I put out a video on YouTube of when we went to visit Noble Jew Ali's gravesite, right? And before the video of visiting the gravesite, I have a song of mine as the intro music, right? Called I Know. And the chorus is, I know what dirty Moors did to Noble Jew Ali. Right? Right? So throughout the video, I'm showing all these different pictures of like Masonic mausoleums, right? Like all these grand structures that they have over these grave sites of Masons, and one of the pictures in there was a picture of the mausoleum for the reincarnated prophet, right? Like big thing, right? So, I use the picture because, that struck me that damn, the reincarnated prophet has a mausoleum, and it took us about maybe like 15-20 minutes to find Noble Drawley's plaque. He has two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Two plaques on his gravesite that are like, well, this big. Maybe a little bigger than this. Right? Just like, like in the grass. Right? This is all. Something the size of this is all that's there. But then the reincarnated prophet has this, big thing, right? So this guy's mad because, I use his picture. And I didn't acknowledge that, I got the picture from him or whatever, right? So that's how the whole thing came up about, talking about the reincarnated prophets and, to make a point to these people who are following this fraud called the reincarnated prophet. And there's no such thing as quote unquote reincarnate. That's not a word.
It's gonna be reincarnated, got to be the original person, not a second
right.
person.
But then again, to incarnate means to come back into flesh.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's got to be the original person.
Yeah,
that's going to happen.
But it's not going to be an adult because you only come back into flesh as a child.
So therefore, adult cannot be
reincarnate. But this is the level of the people back then that they were able to run this game on people after the prophet left. Because remember, this is all after the prophet left. This isn't during the prophet's time. This is after he's gone. Now he can't say nothing. Now people are like, oh yeah, 2,500,000 members? Like, time to cash in. Time to cash in. He's not here no more. You know what I mean? How about we start this new organization called whatever? You know what I mean? Right? And then you have people, right, saying like, oh yeah, Europeans funded those guys. And you know what I mean? When they straight got their money from these looters of King Tut's grave. Right? Noble Drawley. That same thing they did with. Right? After he's gone, take all his stuff. Right? So we're still on constitutional psychopathic inferiority. Right? This is off RV Bay Publications website. Brother Taj read this to us when we went to the Jersey lecture. So we just want to put this on the record as far as the position of the United States. Right? And this is Speaker James Traficant, Traficant, addressing the House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11. Members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history, the U.S. government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9, 1933. 48 Statute 1 Public Law 89 to 719, declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent. HJR 192, 73rd Congress, M Session, June 5, 1933. Joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolving the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States government officers and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today only in name only. So what the civic mores are trying to get the people to understand is that the temple is really this body called the government. because the US government is bankrupt and insolvent. So the authority goes back to the sovereign, because they said it right there that they suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold cause and dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States.
What date was that?
That was 1933. So like older people, the only sovereigns left are the Moors. If the sovereignty that the US was using is now dissolved, right, then it goes back to the rightful heirs, right? Because they quit their position, they quit their job, right? But remember, he's saying that that the United States federal government exists today in name only. Marley! Islam, Marley. Islam. It's good. Chilling. Right. The receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. All United States offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status in name only under emergency war powers. With the constitutional republican form of government now dissolved, the receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States. This new form of government is known as a democracy, being an established socialist communist order under a new governor for America. This act was instituted and established by transferring and or placing the office of the Secretary of the Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund. Public Law 94 to 564, page 8, section HR 13955, reads in part, the U.S. Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. Gold and silver, you're here for a bit? Gold and silver were such a powerful money during the founding of the United States of America that the founding fathers declared that only gold or silver coins can be money in America. Since gold and silver coinage were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks and a claim check was issued as a money substitute. People traded their coupons as money or currency. Currency is not money, but a money substitute. Redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes make no such promises and are not money. The Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government, not money. The federal United States government and the U.S. Congress were not and have not ever been authorized by the Constitution for the United States of America to issue any kind but lawful money, gold and silver coin. It is essential that we comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money substitute. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper into debt. We the people no longer have any money. Most Americans have not been paid any money for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire life. Now do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now do you understand why you are bankrupt along with the rest of the country? Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. Federal Reserve notes are an inflatable paper system designed to create debt through inflation, in brackets, devaluation of currency. Whenever there is an increase of the supply of a money substitute in the economy without a corresponding increase in gold and silver backing, inflation occurs. Inflation is an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible governments inflict on their citizens. Right? Individuals who show a lifelong constitutional tendency not to conform to the customs of the group and who habitually misbehave and have no sense of responsibility. Right? They have no sense of responsibility. Inflation is an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible governments inflict on their citizens. The Federal Reserve Bank, who controls the supply and movement of Federal Reserve notes, has everybody fooled. They have access to an unlimited supply of Federal Reserve notes, paying only for the printing costs of what they need. Federal Reserve notes are nothing more than promissory notes for U.S. Treasury securities, T-bills, a promise to pay the debt to the Federal Reserve Bank. There is a fundamental difference between paying and discharging a debt. To pay a debt, you must pay with value or substance, i.e. gold, silver, barter, or a commodity. With Federal Reserve notes, you can only discharge a debt. You cannot pay a debt with a debt currency system. You cannot service a debt with a currency that has no backing in value or substance. No contract in common law is valid unless it involves an exchange of good and valuable consideration. Unpayable debt transfers power and control to the sovereign power structure that has no interest in money, law, equity, or justice, because they have so much wealth already. Their lust is for power and control. Since the inception of central banking, they have controlled the fates of nations. The Federal Reserve System is based on canon law, which is the popes, and principles of sovereignty protected in Constitution and Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers use a canon law trust as their motto, adding stock and naming it a joint stock trust. The U.S. Congress has passed a law making it illegal for any legal person to duplicate a joint stock trust in 1873. The Federal Reserve Act was legislated post facto to 1870 through post facto laws, although post facto laws are strictly forbidden by the Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Part 3. The Federal Reserve System is a sovereign power structure separate and distinct from the federal United States government. The Federal Reserve is a maritime lender and or maritime insurance underwriter to the federal United States, operating exclusively under Admiralty maritime law. The lender or underwriter bears the risk, and the maritime law compelling specific performance in paying the interest or premiums are the same. Assets of the debtor can also be hypothecated, to pledge something as a security without taking possession of it, as security by the lender or underwriter. The Federal Reserve Act stipulated that the interest on the debt was to be paid in gold. There was no stipulation in the Federal Reserve Act for ever paying the principal. Prior to 1913, I know Raleigh founded 1913, right? Most Americans owned clear allodial title to property, free and clear of any liens or mortgages until the Federal Reserve Act 1913 hypothecated all property within the federal United States to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, in which the trustees or stockholders held legal title. The U.S. citizen, tenant, franchisee was registered as a beneficiary of the trust via his or her birth certificate. In 1933, the federal United States hypothecated all of the present and future properties, assets, and labor of their quote-unquote subjects, the 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, to the Federal Reserve System. In return, The Federal Reserve System agreed to extend the Federal United States Corporation all the credit money substitute it needed. Like any other debtor, the Federal United States government had to assign collateral and security to their creditors as a condition of the loan. Since the Federal United States didn't have any assets, they assigned the private property of their economic slaves, the U.S. citizens, as collateral against the unpayable federal debt. They also pledged the unincorporated federal territories, national parks, forests, birth certificates, and non-profit organizations as collateral against the federal debt. All has already been transferred as payment to the international bankers. Unwittingly, America has returned to its pre-American Revolution. Feudal roots whereby all lands is held by a sovereign, and the common people had no rights to hold allodial title to property. Once again, we the people are the tenants and sharecroppers, renting our own property from a sovereign in guise of the Federal Reserve Bank. We the people have exchanged one master for another. This has been going on for over 80 years without informed knowledge of the American people, without a voice presenting loud enough. Now it's easy to grasp why America is fundamentally bankrupt. Why don't more people own their properties outright? Why are 90% of Americans mortgaged to the hilt and have little or no assets after all debts and liabilities have been paid? Why does it feel that you are working harder and harder and getting less and less? We are reaping what we have been sown. We are reaping what has been sown. And the results of our harvest is a painful bankruptcy and a foreclosure on American property, precious liberties, and a way of life. Few of our elected representatives in Washington, D.C. have dared to tell the truth. The federal United States is bankrupt. Our children will inherit this unpayable debt and the tyranny to enforce paying it. America has become completely bankrupt in world leadership, financial credit, and its reputation for courage, vision, and human rights. This is an undeclared economic war, bankruptcy, and economic slavery of the most corrupt order. Wake up, America. Take back your country. And wake up, America means indigenous people, not Europeans. Wake up, America means us, not Europeans that came over here. So you have the speaker addressing the House of Representatives, more active, more constitutionally superior than people with turbans and fezzes on. That's a problem. Because this should be coming out of Moore's mouths. This is not supposed to be coming from some pseudo authority. But that was the whole thing with the sellout. That we teach people that it's important for you to study, so you know. So if you don't know, trust me, there's people willing to take advantage of you, and they don't care. Right? Like we were talking about in the Sudan article. Right? They're straight denationalizing people. Right? Like they are denationalizing people. They're stripping people of their nationality so that they can take advantage of them. You know, that's outrageous. That's why Noble Jolly said, right, for Morris to be active, not passive. Because once you're active, you'll be able to exercise your freedoms, right? And exercising your freedoms is not supposed to be like how it is. right now, you know, with feeling threatened and, well, you know, they have guns and jails and, you know what I mean, they might do something, right? You know, it's not supposed to be like that. The Noble came laid down everything that we're supposed to do already. But without following that, you know, you get caught up in the hearsay of the Moorish movement, right? And the hearsay of the Moorish movement does, the only people that does injustice is the people who go down that road now, right? And then, you know, go down that road for 10, 15 years, become concrete in that fraud position that, you know, the reincarnated prophet is really the one, you know, right? So our thing is, you know, let's deal with Noble Drew Ali, because we haven't, right? And we've dealt with everybody else. You know, everybody has philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey. Everybody has you know, views of Haile Selassie. Everybody has the words of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, last speeches, like that. Everybody's stuff. And not the one that started it all. Right? Like, how you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't not give him honor. You know? Right? And that's where it comes into that. You know, if it's, I was saying, like, if we can't convince them that they're Negro black color, it doesn't make sense to tell them anything else. I don't even have to have a conversation, you know, right? It's not going to amount to anything whatsoever, right? That's why it's good when we see elders come in, we know that, okay, well, not all of them are really off the ledge, you know. There's some of them that their connection, you know, their wiring is still good, even though with all the brainwashed TV and all this stuff going on, there's still organic things like in them, you know. Like, it's like when we say, you know, you might tell some people, oh yeah, you know, just say Jamaicans and you know, you're not Negro, black color, yeah, I'm Jamaican, and then you talk Maroons and their whole attitude change immediately. Talk about their granddad, oh yeah, my granddad and this guy's a Maroon, and yeah, my uncle's friend's cousin and whatever, yeah, they're Maroons. Okay, so what happened to you? Well, you know, I'm Jamaican. Okay. All right. No. It's like island. People don't come from islands. People come from countries. You know, islands, land. We don't come from islands. This is how we come from the islands is fraud. You know, because the islands are connected to North America. And the country of North America is Morocco. The country of North America is not the United States and Canada and Mexico. The country of North America is Morocco. The countries of South America, Brazil, Chile, Peru, you know, Guyana, that people are going to say is the West Indies. Mm-hmm. When that's on South America, like on it, and they'll say that those people are Caribbean, mm-hmm. And then the ones whose circuitry is running good, they'll stop you and say, no, we're South American. Right. So there's a writing called Kavit Tor. And then all these are in Noble Drew Ali, The Last Prophet, His Prophecies and Hadiths, Moorish Literatures, Proclamations, Sacred Warnings to All Humanity. And you can get that at sevensealspublications.com. I'm just going to Seven Seals Publications.com. And the book's $10, which is nothing. for what's in here? Nothing. $10 that's pennies. So Kavit Emtor. Moors are men upright, independent, and fearless, who care for their loved ones and follow the Prophet to a destiny which is not uncertain or unknown. They are fortified by the impregnable doctrine built upon love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. It is therefore folly at its greatest height for smelly culprits with their insidious plans to invade such a realm. They try and try, but their own bad planning brings down wrath upon their heads like the sword old Damocles had. Intrigue and scurrilous cunnings find a difficult path to travel within the ranks of the Moors. This is so because the Moorish movement has been well planned by Prophet Noble Drew Ali, whose latent powers are abundant, unknown, and may be called into action as a matter of defense at any moment. Prophet Noble Drew Ali knows the people within his ranks who are interested. They are vanguard of the movement as the Moorish hordes increase here in America. All of the Moors are active, not passive. All of the Moors are active, not passive. A member's interests can only be in one direction, and having traveled over the road years before, the Prophet knows where every member is along the road. A few feet below is another road, where schemers walk, where traders grin, and culprits bask in the sun. They think they are on the same road with true Moors, but the Moors are high above on a pinnacle where they might view the destructionists as they fall for the last time, and their bones bleach in the sultry midday sun. Hungry scavengers flying high, catch scent, devour, and leave crying out, Kavit Emtor, cast out the dead carcass. The Moors high above see these plotters, purveyors, and worse that exists, hurl themselves downward by their own work as the hawks wait.
Thinking.
We're going to open up for questions too right now, so if you have any questions.
There's another statement. The only way our people is going to know about this on a mass level, like, they're not going to let you know about this in the schools, right?
Right.
So, really, you should be kind of trying to get to the household so that parents can pass it down to their children.
Right.
That's the only way. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. And this is why we were saying in the beginning that everybody coming in has to be active. Everybody coming in has to be ahead. You can't come in under the mentality that, okay, well, I'm going to come in and, there's somebody else that's going to do the job. Right? You have to come in being prepared to do the job.
Right.
Because, like, it's like if you see booger on somebody's nose, no people won't tell people that booger on your face. Right? No people won't say nothing. No people let you walk around with a booger on your nose all day.
Switch statement.
Yeah.
And into what the sister said. Like, I don't think it's hard to reach the parents, especially in this time right now, because most of our parents or children who are younger or whatever, the parents consume with trying to maintain the household on a material, physical level. So on a spiritual, intellectual level, it's going to be hard for her to connect with the child because the child's rarely in her presence or his presence anyway. I'm going to say her because mostly mothers who are out there. And
up your volume a little.
yeah, the only one.
Also,
The only way that I could, like, and it triggered to me that you're right though, you're not wrong at all, but it's gonna be hard. That's the best way that the knowledge can be reached. That's what it's supposed to be passed down from the elders to the young, to the suffering, right? So the only way I can see that happening is if somehow, because our elders, most of them go to church. That's the only way you can reach them. Yeah. Try to tie them on the pulpit and give them the true message that way, in that venue. So that's the only way you get them together, where they would be able to sit down and listen and have the time to absorb that type of information. Is in a church venue. That's the only way I see it. Any other thing, they're not even going to accept, because the church is their indoctrination anyway, where that's their comfort zone. Like, they're not leaving that to go to a meeting like how you sisters are here right now to listen. That this is rare. It's a beautiful thing. And I'm very honored to be here with you guys right now. But to reach the parents is going to be so difficult. That's why we try to reach the youth.
Yeah, we just go to the youth straight.
So when the youth go to the youth straight, when the youth goes home, what does the youth say? Does the youth discuss it with the parents?
You have to look at all the years and levels and layers of brainwashing and conditioning and programming that have done to us. So technically, you had more than me, because you've been on this plane longer. So it's going to be harder for you to break out of that condition because you've been in it longer, right? It's easy to get a newborn because they're not tainted. They're not tainted, exactly.
And trust me, I'm not conditioned.
Right.
Well, that's why you're here.
Something wrong.
That's why you're here.
And students might want to come home and tell their parents, and they might not just keep it to themselves.
I can't get my.
A lot to absorb that.
My mom can't. She won't come here. She would come if, like, we're on the road together and say I'm stopping off at a meeting. She's already with me.
Why didn't you trick her? Why don't you give it us to read?
I gave her a better book than that. I gave her the Moorish Quran. That's it right there. Yeah, that's the Moorish Quran. Yeah. Well, it goes hand in hand with that book.
Yeah.
But she says she touches it sometimes, but she has her comforts for those. And like, this is new. Like, what kind of pamphlet book are you bringing me to?
Yeah, to read.
Just read it. And if everyone had one of these, like, in their homes, like the Holy Bible.
Yeah.
You read it to your children every night before they go to bed, like the bedtime story.
Yeah, for sure. But remember that we're talking this time. What we're talking about was supposed to be done. What you're talking about was supposed to be done by those Moors that said they wanted to be reincarnated prophet. Right? That's really what it comes down to. Right? How come we're in this position? Because people who were supposed to tell didn't tell. Right? And then and even with regard to, like, well, what are the youths gonna do when they get it, right? Ask your son.
They're going to get they're going to get. I want to ask you the other one.
Right. Like, the sons that come out, sorry to cut you, but the sons that come out and step out to do this, it's only because of the energy of their mother. But their mother don't even know, but the energy is transferred in them to do the work, because we're in a time of patriarch. So right now, as much as we would love women to come out and step into their own, and so we can sit back and not have to say anything or do anything, because you guys are the ones who are supposed to tell us what to do and how this thing is supposed to run. As much as we would like that, the world is not that type of world right now where we could have a woman on a pulpit and everybody's listening to her. You might have one place like that. Yeah, like 3 places like that, but the majority, right? And the majority of minds are patriarchal mind states, so they can't even see that concept. So it has to come through the male to bring that feminine energy. So your son's only here because of you, and he's only going to do what you ordained him to do from before you guys even on this plane. From ancient times. Right.
Right. Was there any questions?
Someone who's like at this level, you want to get further now. You really want to get into witchcraft sciences or understanding truly who you are.
Yeah.
Not get beyond this
Right.
physical manifestation. Not this, like I'm understanding the paperwork and being able to speak to it to a certain point, and you're gonna reach a point where that's settled.
Yeah.
Where it's settled to a certain point, and then you want to go further down it. You want to understand what a human is. Earth.
A human being.
Yeah. What's the process, or are there better books or other units, followers?
Okay, all right, let's do this, right? Remember when we were talking about the Attic chamber and all that type of stuff? There's an Attic chamber book, right? So-called Attic chamber book, right? Called Mysteries of the Silent Brotherhood of the East. And it's known to the adepts as the Red Book. Right? A Red Book, you're only getting that from the temple. But you can only get that if you're adept. That's how they set it up. If you're adept. Yeah. If you're on a higher level of information.
Higher degree of knowledge.
Okay.
Right? That's the only way that you get this book. But if the book happens to fall into your hands, you're considered, blessed or whatever, because it's what the Silent Brotherhood of the East is what you're talking about, that Joshua went through in the years that he went to study. So, like in the Quran, we talk about the years that he went to study. But this goes into what was he studying when he went. And when he went to India and when he went to these places, what were the lessons that were being taught, right? So this is chapter 8. This is chapter 8, called The Council of the Seven of the World. Right? Like this is where this is going on those levels. Right? In every age since time began, but 7 sages lived. At first of every age, these sages meet to note the course of nations, people, tribes, and tongues, to note how far towards justice and love the race has gone, to formulate the code of law, religious postulates, and plans of rule best suited to the common age. An age had passed, and lo, another age had come. The sages must convene. Now Alexandria was the center of the world's best thought, and here in Philo's home the sages met. From China came Mengst, from India Vidyapati, from Persia Casper came, and from Assyria Ashbina came. From Greece Apollo came, Matheno was the Egyptian sage, and Philo was the chief of Hebrew thought. The time was due. The council met and sat in silence 7 days. And Mengsti rose and said, the wheel of time has turned once more. The race is on a higher plane of thought. The garments that our fathers wore have given out. The cherubim have woven a celestial cloth, have placed it in our hands, and we must make for men new garments. The sons of men are looking up for greater light. No longer do they care for gods hewn out of wood. They seek for Allah, not made with hands. They see the beams of coming days, and yet comprehend them not. The time is ripe, and we must fashion well these garments for the race. And let us make for men new garbs of justice, mercy, and love, that they may hide their nakedness when shines the light of coming days. And Vidyapati said, our priests have all gone mad. They saw a demon in the wilds, and at him cast their lamps. Now they are broken up, and not a gleam of light has any priest for men. The night is dark. The heart of India calls for light. The priesthood cannot be reformed. It is already dead. Its greatest needs are graves and funeral chants. The new sounds similar to some stuff going on today. The new age calls for liberty, the kind that makes each man a priest, enables him to go alone and lay his offerings on the shrine of Allah. And Casper said, in Persia, people walk in fear. They do good for fear to do the wrong. The devil is the greatest power in our land, and through a myth he dandles on his knees, both young and age. Our land is dark, and evil prospers in the dark. Negro black colored. Fear rides on every passing breeze and lurks in every form of life. The fear of evil is a myth, is an illusion and snare, but it will live until some mighty power shall come to raise the ethers to the plane of light. When this shall come to pass, the Magian land will glory in the light. The soul of Persia calls for light. Chapter 9. Opening address of Yahshua with the 7 sages. 7 days silence. Ashbina said, Assyria is the land of doubt. The chariot of my people, that in which they mostly ride, is labeled doubt. Once faith walked in Babylon, and she was bright and fair, but she was clothed in such white robes that men became afraid of her. And every wheel began to turn, and doubt made war on her and drove from the land, and she came back no more. In form man worships Allah, the One. In heart, they are not sure that Allah exists. Faith worships at the temple of one not seen, but doubt must see her God. The greatest needs of all Assyria is faith, a faith that seasons everything that is with certainty. And then Apollo said, the greatest need for Greece are true conceptions of Allah, the One. In Greece, it is rudderless, for every thought may be good to worship as Allah. The plane of thought is broad and full of sharp antagonists, and so the circle of the gods is filled with enmity and wars and base intrigues. Greece needs a mastermind to stand above the gods, to raise the mind of men away from many gods to Allah the One. We know the light is coming over the hills. Allah speed the light. Manetho said, behold this land of Egypt of the dead. Our temples long have been tombs of hidden things of time. Our temple crypts and caves are dark. In light there is no secret things. The sun reveals all hidden truth. There are no mysteries in Allah. Behold the rising sun. His beams are entering every door. Yes, every crevice of the mystic crypts of Mizraim. We hail the light. All Egypt craves the light. And Philo said, the need of Hebrew thought and life is liberty. The Hebrew prophets, seers, and givers of the law were men of power, men of holy thought, and they bequeathed to us a system of love that was ideal, one strong enough to lead our people to the goal of perfectness. But carnal minds repudiated this law of love, and filled the minds with selfishness, and purity in heart became a myth. The people were enslaved, but when he comes, who is he to come? He will proclaim emancipation for the slaves. My people will be free. Behold, for Allah has made incarnate wisdom, love and light, which he called Emmanuel. To him is given the key to open up the dawn. And here as men he walked with us. And the council chamber door was open, and the Logos stood among the sages of the world. Again the sages sat in silence 7 days. Chapter 10. Meeting of the 7 sages to make laws for the coming age for the nations of the earth. Now when the sages were refreshed, they opened up the book of life and read. They read the story of the life of man, and all his struggles, losses, and gains, and in light of past events and deeds, they saw that would be best for him in coming years. They knew the kind of law and precept suited to his estate. They saw the highest Allah ideal that the race could comprehend. Upon the 7 postulates, these sages were formulated the new law of life of the coming age that souls may rest. Now Mengst was the oldest sage. He took the chair of chief and said, man is not far enough advanced to live by faith. He cannot comprehend the things his eyes sees not. He yet is a child, and during all the coming age, he must be taught by pictures, symbols, rites, and forms. His God must be a human God. He cannot see Allah by faith, and he cannot rule himself. The king must rule. The man must serve. The age that follows this will be the age of man, the age of faith. In the blessed age, the human race will see without the aid of carnal eyes, will hear the soundless sound, will know the spirit Allah. The age we enter is the preparation age, and all the schools must design in a simple way that men may comprehend. And man cannot originate. He builds by patterns that he can see. So in this council, we must carve out patterns for the coming age, and we must formulate the gnosis of the empire of the soul which rests on 7. Each sage in turn shall perform a postulate, and shall be the basis of the creeds of men until the perfect age shall come. Yeah. Oh damn, one more page. Then Mengs wrote the first. All things are thought, and life is thought activity. The multitudes of beings are but phases of one great thought made manifest. Lo, Allah is thought, and thought is Allah. Then Vidyapati wrote the second postulate. Eternal thought is one. In essence, it is two, intelligence and force. When they breathe, a child is born. This child is love. And thus the triune Allah stands forth, whom men can call Father, Mother, Son. This triune Allah is one, but like the one of light, in essence he is 7. And when the triune Allah breathes forth, those 7 spirits stand before his face. These are creative attributes. Men call them lesser gods, and in their image they made man. And Casper wrote the third. Man was the thought of Allah, formed in the image of the septenate, clothed in the substance of soul. And his desires were strong. He sought to manifest on every plane of life. And for himself, he made a body of the ethers of the earthly forms. And so he descended to the plane of earth. In this descent, he lost his birthright, lost his harmony with Allah, made discordant all the notes of life. Inharmony and evil are the same. So evil is handwork of man. Ashbina wrote the fourth. Seeds do not germinate in light. They do not grow until they find the soil and hide themselves away from light. Man was evolved a seed of everlasting light. But in the ethers of the triune Allah, the light was far too great for seeds to grow. And so man sought the soil of carnal life, and in the darksomeness of earth he found a place where he could germinate and grow. The seed has taken root and grown full well. The tree of life is rising from the soil of earthly things, and under natural law is reaching up to perfect form. There are no supernatural acts of Allah to lift a man from carnal life to spirit blessedness. He grows as grows the plant, and in due time is perfected. The quality of soul that make it possible for man to rise to spirit life is purity. And so that's just the silent brotherhood, right? Where they came from? There should be one. There should be one in there. That file there. The book with the crescent and star in it right there. The third book down. Yeah, that one right there. Oh no, the pastor, let me see it. No, the third one down. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it right there.
This is not the I have like English and after that from the North
Mm-hmm.
So
No. Right. Okay. So this is how it looks in the Arab chamber. Right. And it's red. So for all the people there who are, in temples and they talk religion and all that type of stuff, you have to go demand that you get this, because it's supposed to be given to the people. Yeah, this is supposed to be part of the stuff that they get when they come in. There's not supposed to be no Arab chamber, right? What the Arab chamber is really the heads who make everything run, right? But it's not no secret group of people. They're supposed to let everybody know what's going on with regard to that congregation, yeah, right? But they haven't done that, right? They have their parking spots in the front, right? Then they have a sign or whatever, and then everybody else has worn out paint places where they have to go park, right? Okay, and then when you go at the back of those guys' cars, right, you're gonna see they have like circles with these things on them, right? And then there's a G in between here, right? And then they park in the front, and people still go in and out of there and fund that every Sunday, right? But then nobody questions how come those guys have those little things on their car and nobody else.
Yeah, we don't have it, and we're still the members of the congregation.
Yeah.
So everybody should have it.
Oh, so that means that there's something else going on, right?
Yeah. Everyone should have it. If you're a member, you should get your member sign.
Whatever it is, because like you're saying, you're a member. Why wouldn't the heads give you what you're supposed to get?
Once you come in and you join, you should get your information.
Right. So this is I know that coming into this information, right? You've just been awoken. Like if you thought that before, yeah, you knew about yourself, and I'm from Africa or whatever, and that you're awake, you're still dead back then. Like you got a Moorish knowledge, yeah. pulling the covers, no, light in your eyes, yeah. Trying to keep it dark, right? But eventually you have to get up. Like you're not gonna cover up 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. You know what I mean? Sun's baking outside, right? So that's pretty much where we're at right now. I don't know if there's any comments, questions, or anything like that. Anything there, Yasin?
I just want to say keep faith, man.
Got to.
Someone's got to do the work, right?
Yeah.
Got to help you get that.
Same with
he was asking about it, right?
Let's see what else is here quick fast.
I don't know if I gave you this. Is this truth about your health? Did I give you that one already?
Right.
I don't know.
So the
this one as well, you guys could share that.
so from the like all the literature and stuff that you get, right? Like things that you get from us, if it's like DVDs or like little books and that, like what you're doing, right? That's the objective of having that stuff. Copy it and then give it to other people and whatever, right? And then like what you were talking about with the bringing it to the parents type of thing, right? That would come from like people like yourself that's gonna do something like like an Avon type of thing, right? At your house.
I was sitting and thinking about that
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Having friends over at the house.
Yeah, and we just do an information
about
session.
that thing.
Yeah,
So I was thinking in my
Right.
mind about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and it doesn't have to be 50 people. It could be 5 people, 1 person,
But I have to
2
need some
people.
more stuff
Right?
first. Yeah.
No, well, you're just the host though.
Oh, I'm the
Until you get to the level where you can do it for yourself.
Yeah.
So I can host it.
Yeah, you can host
Okay.
it, right?
Alright.
And then we would just come and cook some food, and we have a little get together, potluck or something like that, right? And we just get down to some building,
Okay.
right? Because
Another one of those.
we're sort of at that position already, right?
Yeah.
Like there's people that say, we're around, we help each other, we do work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? So it is communal. So as people come in, you might come in with something that, with access that we don't really necessarily have access to, right? You might have access to people, right? That want the information, but they don't know how to really go about it. They might have a computer to be able to go online every day or whatever, you know what I mean? But they want to get the information, especially people who are just coming in, like, they just found out that they're African or something like that. Instead of making them go through all the brainwash about African and then realize that you're not that either, you just bring them to the Mars thing like right away from the jump, right? And then let them see that how all the African and all that stuff is fraud by having the right thing from the start, and then telling those people to bring their children when they come to the little meeting or whatever we want to call it, right? So that the young people could get it. Because telling them, they might not take it, but their subconscious mind will take it, and 4 or 5 years down the road, something will happen, and then it'll start coming back to them. Yeah, I think so. Just the back might be different. One of them is going to say the Moorish Holy, and one of them is going to say Moorish Science Temple. Right? There's is there more the red book there? Right. Yeah, it should be faster. Small. One thing to reiterate the importance of us realizing that there's people out there that need to be saved, right? Regardless of what they think they are, believe they are, whatever, we have to address them as Moors. You can't play the game with them. Oh, well, we're gonna relate to them on level, so I'm calling you a black person, right? Because then that means they can do that to you, and then if they do that to you, then you just lost your nationality. Now you have to go through the process of them. Now go back and follow the prophet and read all the prophet when you're supposed to be. You're not supposed to come off this once you get on this side. Once you get on this side, this is it. Like, this is really like when they say, we've been struggling, and then we can't seem to find the end of the struggle. Like, this is the end of the struggle. That everybody said people died struggling. Didn't even get to reap anything. All dues they paid and all that, didn't get anything. People who took their 5, 10, 15 acres, gave it to the church, and now, people today now have nothing.
Yes.
Because their mom or their grandmother gave the land to the church. I mean, that's not sorcery. You're gonna give it to the church before you give it to your own blood? You're gonna give it to the church. Not even a thought, just thought, okay, right? Just like when they were coming around and saying, oh yeah, we're coming to collect gold. You give us gold and we're gonna give you.
I was gonna say they give the church the gold too, and
Yeah.
the gold the church
Melt it down.
and line the pastor's pocket.
Right?
Oh,
So
yeah, I know this girl. Oh, she carry her hair. So you crazy?
right?
You take her jewelry that she have 20 bucks.
Yeah.
Here, go to Costa to fix it.
For real, huh?
For real.
Straight taking off their jewelry, going to the pastor. 2012.
Not just she done it years ago.
Wow.
2-3 years ago. I know this girl
Wow.
that does it.
So that's where we're at. So that's where we're at, right? So just to press the point of King Alfred plan also, that in teaching people that you're not Negro black colored, right? And then they say, oh, whatever, I'm black. Then you go to repercussions for calling yourself Negro black colored. And then the repercussions of that is King Alfred plan. And then that's online, internet, they can document it, they go read it. If they don't want to read it, cool. But we're going to put out some of the important parts of King Alfred plan so people could understand how serious it is. Just like the Sudanese, right? Saying, you know, like, yo, they're straight denationalizing us. They're taking away our nationality and putting us in a fraudulent jurisdiction that has nothing to do with us, that was created in 2011. And saying that that's a country. But that just came in 2011.
That's last year.
Right?
Whoa.
And they're saying that's the country. Right?
The territory, right? Divided there.
Yeah. You're here. You missed that one. Huh? Yeah, there's the article. Right? So, Zero Committee report. Survey shows that during a 6-year period, production created 9 million objects, or 1,500,000 each year. Production could not dispose of the containers, which proved a bottleneck. However, that was almost 20 years ago. We suggest that vaporization techniques be employed to overcome the production problems inherent in King Alfred. So you might think that you're getting arrested and they're going to put you in a jail cell. They just vaporize you and be done with you, because all the jails are concentration camps. Jails aren't jails, they're concentration camps, and they're just being maintained as jails so that they can keep the grass looking fresh and keep the fence looking shiny, and you know. But when time comes, that's where everybody's going that doesn't have nationality, doesn't belong to a nation, that wants to call themselves colors and have no idea who they are, right? Because people make the statement like, well, what are you going to do if they come and your paperwork's not going to stop them from taking you away? Well, it might not, but at least I know in my heart and my soul and my conscience that I'm not going out as a black person for myself. Like, I know that I'm not going out being assumed that I'm black or Negro or African, or my conscience and my soul is clean, and I'm content with the fact that no matter what, at least I know I'm dying as a man.
That's an energy cost.
Yeah, right, exactly. Because they'll know. They'll know. You know? So they'll, and how we can, this is what we'll close on this note. How Brother Nature and Grand Sheik Taj teach us to separate from the fraud is, 1, stop working for them, and 2, stop thinking for them.
Because you think all the information they get, it, they use it for themselves.
Exactly.
They use it
For everybody. Exactly. So we'll close out on that. We'll just do the prayer. And for those who are not, if you don't want to take part, it's all right. You can observe. But for Moors, we have an affirmation that we do before and after class, right? What it is to just show honor to the ancestors, recognize the prophet, and to align ourselves back up spiritually, right? So we have 5 on the left and 2 on the right, which is 7, right? We could just use the 5 for now, right? And if you look at on the right, so this is like why we do that, yeah, right. So, Allah, the Father of the universe,
Allah, the Father of the universe,
Father of love,
Father of love,
truth,
truth,
peace, freedom,
freedom,
and justice.
and justice.
Allah is our protector,
Allah is our protector,
our guide,
and
our salvation,
our salvation.
by night
By night
and by day.
and by day.
Through His and her holy prophet,
His and her holy prophet,
Noble Jawali.
Noble Jawali.
Amen.
Amen.
Ameen.
Amin.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Hotep.
Hotep.
Islam.
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 Islam, Moors.
And that, I'm going to give you this is the Moorish way to read it. It's a 101 questionnaire.
Okay.
And that has the first page that has the
Okay, I can pull up a copy of this at home.